Hello everyone, welcome to our event tonight. Really excited to see so many faces in this room, so many people are excited to attend this sort of event. I want to first make people aware that this event is being live streamed. We are live streaming it on the Anti-War Committee Instagram page. We are also live streaming it on the Solidarity Committee of the Americas Facebook page. So if you're not cool with being on camera or having your likeness in a live stream, now you're aware it's happening. You know, you can quickly duck under the camera, leave the room, pretend it's not there. These are all great options. So I'm personally really excited about this event. The Anti-War Committee has done a lot of solidarity work over its 24-year existence. Of course, you know, our main campaign right now is around Palestine, but we've historically done solidarity work around countries throughout Central and South America. And one of the kind of biggest situations we were involved in was the intensification of U.S. intervention in Venezuela. It was a big component of our work. We did a lot of good work around it. And it's for that reason that I'm actually very excited to introduce our speaker tonight. So, our speaker is a person that believes that solidarity among people and countries is a fundamental aspect of what makes us human. This person has worked in solidarity with the people of Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Palestine. This person worked as a political advisor to former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, and was fundamentally involved with the revolutionary process in Venezuela. So I'm very excited to introduce to you all here today, Dozthor Zurlent.
Solidarity! Solidarity!
Solidarity!
Solidarity!
Solidarity!
I'm really humble and honored to be here, and I want you to thank you for you taking your time to share tonight this conversation with me. And I want to thank also people who are sharing with us via online, and I'm encouraging everybody after my hopefully a brief presentation to stay for the question and answer session. You know what? Today I felt really inspired by visiting Minnesota. I had the opportunity to share with my friend Sarah Martin, who took me to the George Floyd Memorial, to share these strong feelings that we have towards a lot of our people, because it doesn't matter the distance, it doesn't matter the borders. We are the same people. And George Floyd, the same as many others, some 14, 17 years old. There was one kid, 10 years old, who have been murdered by this criminal system that oppresses people, not only here in the United States, but all over the world, is really a system that is trying to put people against the wall. It's a system that is all the time trying to put people down, and it's a system that is looking for profits, to increase the profits, to increase their wealth at the expense of people. And I'm coming here to talk about Venezuela, and I cannot talk about Venezuela without first clarifying that I have a huge task today, because when I am coming here to talk about Venezuela, I'm bringing part of the Venezuelan history. I'm bringing Simón Bolívar. I'm bringing Hugo Chavez. And I'm bringing people who have given his blood or their blood, his or her blood, for the liberation, not only of Venezuela, but of other countries in Latin America. So I was thinking, where can I start? And I remember this wonderful start when President Chavez in 2006 went to the United Nations General Assembly and said, "It smells sulfur over here." The devil was here yesterday, he said. And he said something that if he had said it today, it would be, every single word would be valid today. He said, we have to make a decision if we want the world to continue being led by a power who doesn't care about people and who is taking us on the path of destruction, on the path of misery, or if we want to take a different path of a pluripolar, multi-centered world where all the countries and all the people can share, can be treated with dignity, and can create a different future for all. I think that today I don't want to compare myself to Chavez, and I humbly just want to say I smell revolution in the United States. I come from a country that in the 19th century lost more than half of their male population and about 20% of their female population, liberating not only Venezuela, but Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia. And in that process, Venezuela, even the Spaniards said, if Venezuela didn't exist, Latin America would still be a colony. And I'm not saying this in an arrogant way. I'm saying this because the magnitude, the dimensions of Bolivar's struggle and Bolivar's vision is so powerful and so immense that if you get to read Bolivar's words and writings, you are going to see that even today, 200 years later, they have everything that he said is still valid. It still applies to our reality. And he said something like this in a letter he sent to a friend of his. The United States seemed to be destined to plague America, the American continent, of hunger and misery in the name of freedom. We also had the opportunity to enjoy the energy, the passion, the sympathy, the ingenuity of our eternal commander, Hugo Chavez. And Chavez and Bolivar are an inspiration for Venezuelans, but also, I think, they are an inspiration for the rest of the world. And why is then that Venezuela is portrayed as supposed to be dictatorship or supposed to be regime violating human rights, etc. Why is it that Obama in 2015 declared Venezuela an unusual and extraordinary threat to the United States? And I want you to just to start by saying that Venezuela is a women-oriented revolution. The main leaders of the Venezuelan revolution are women. In the last elections, about 2 months ago, we have a community-based election, and 83% of the people elected were women. And it has to do with a revolution that has people as a priority, which is people-oriented, is women-oriented, is children-oriented. Children is our first priority. By law, children has rights over any other sector of the society. And I'm happy to announce that a week ago, about a week ago, we finished the 4.2 million housing unit that the government has been building for the poor in Venezuela. We have a huge housing deficit in Venezuela. And if you multiply 4.2 million by 4 people average in the Venezuelan family, you get 16 million people, half of the Venezuelan population, benefiting from this program. We, as Venezuelans, don't have to pay taxes on the property of our houses. No one can take your house away from you. A housing is a human right in Venezuela. Even if you, for some reason, cannot pay a loan, no one can take your house as a collateral, and nobody can take your house away from you. And if a couple gets divorced, whoever gets to keep the kids gets to keep the house. Because kids, as I mentioned before, are the priority. So in this process of trying to find ways to improve the quality of life for Venezuela and trying to create revolution, we have found a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties. Nothing is achieved overnight. Everything is struggle. So you need to understand that we are in a situation where we are not in a laboratory under ideal conditions, isolated from everything else, doing experiments and coming with solutions to solve every single problem in the country. We are pretty much in a process where we are riding a bike and at the same time changing the tires. You know? And in that process, we make mistakes. We have a very powerful enemy who is trying to make things a lot more difficult for us in the revolutionary process. We have internal enemies in the country and infiltrators. We have also the need to educate people and to allow people to bring ideas forward. So some people ask me, is Venezuela a socialist country or is still capitalist? And I tell them, Venezuela is a popular, power-based country. And what it means is that we have a little faucet, hand-sized, that because we have people's power, then we can close it or we can open it. So that means that to call ourselves socialist or capitalist is not relevant. What is relevant is to have the power to build socialism at the rhythm that your own people can do it. And under the conditions, in a flexible way, in a way that conditions both internally and externally allow you to do it. We have been subjected to sanctions, blockades, to the stealing of our assets in foreign countries. We lost Citgo. We lost a company called Monomeros in Colombia, which I want to thank President Petro because he returned Monomeros as soon as he could to Venezuelan hands. And I want to also take the opportunity to congratulate President Lula for his victory in Brazil. And what it means is that now, instead of being surrounded by enemy governments, we have presidents who are willing to work together with us in the creation of a better future. We still have U.S. military bases in Colombia. We have 9 openly declared military bases and 2 hidden ones, where they train people from the Colombian military and paramilitary forces, and even people from other countries. They train in those bases. They train people from Argentina when they had a plan to invade Venezuela using Argentina and Colombia forces. So we still have that, and we still have a lot of problems in Venezuela. We are not perfect, and probably will never be perfect, and we are not looking to be perfect. What we are doing is we are creating a system built from the ground up, and we call it the inversion of the pyramid, where the base of the pyramid is at the top and the apex is at the bottom. Meaning, people at the top and the wealthy people at the bottom, with the head down, of course. and then we have a mixed economy where we have a private economy, we have a private sector, and we have even wealthy people still producing and doing business in Venezuela. We also have foreign corporations. We have Chevron still working in Venezuela and obtaining a special license during this period of blockade and sanctions in Venezuela. But what we do have, and that I think is fundamental and is one of the most important things, is that we have a union bus leader as our president, Nicolás Maduro. A man who is on the side, by the side of the people. A man who has been taken who has taken Chavez's flag and Chavez's idea and is pushing forward to build what Chavez's legacy has meant for the Venezuelan people, and who has the best interests of the Venezuelan people in his mind and heart. But that's not enough. We also have community-based institutions. When I mean institution, I don't mean bureaucracy. I mean people build institutions through assemblies and elections who elect their leaders. And we have, for example, street councils. And the street councils may be several streets, but we call it street councils. And they have a sector of the community where they work together with the people, they organize assemblies, they can get financing to solve community problems directly from the national budget. They don't have to ask the mayor or the governor. I mean, they can, but they can submit their own projects and get direct financing from the national budget. And these people, they can not only develop their own projects, but they have a direct relationship with the community. So they know what's going on there. So if there is a woman who is out of work and she has several kids, then it's a concern for this street council to find ways to help this woman with their kids and with and to try to find a job for her, to help her find a job. And what we have seen in this past period of COVID and of prefabricated migration of Venezuelan to other countries, and I use the word prefabricated because it's not something that people just at one point decided, okay, let's go to other countries and see how is the life over there or whatever. People, through sanctions and some other measures and sabotage, and were made to suffer really difficult times and a lot of hardship, and because they say, we are going to sanction Maduro. Yeah, but who are really they sanctioning? They are sanctioning the people of Venezuela, and the ones who suffer the most are the children and the elderly, because they are the most vulnerable sectors of the society. So we have a lot of people who died from curable diseases because we couldn't have access to medicine. We had people who didn't have the possibility of obtaining food because they were taking food from markets and from whatever place they could and hoarding them out to other countries to create scarcity inside the country. And the idea was to make us desperate and to make us get to a level of desperation and anxiety that we would be willing to overthrow our government. And the propaganda was telling people that it was Nicolás Maduro's fault that they were going through those difficult times. So people, or some people, were also offered to go to other countries where they could get villas and castles, you know. They were offered high salaries, they were offered free medical care, they were offered very good or special jobs for Venezuela. They were even offered to have a certain amount of income through the United Nations Refugee Organization. I don't remember the name. In Spanish is ACNUR. They were offered even cash through ACNUR if they would go to a different country. And what happened was that Venezuelans going through very difficult situations, sabotage to the energy sector, sabotage to the telecommunications sector, sabotage to the water system, sabotage to the gasoline. They stole Citgo, which was our main gasoline provider. They stopped providing us with lubricants and parts for our refineries. Refineries had to shut down, and we couldn't produce gasoline. So people were having very hard times. The United States made an agreement with Saudi Arabia to lower oil prices initially to $20 a barrel. The idea was that lowering prices of oil would make the Iranian government to be overthrown and to facilitate the process that they were involved in trying to overthrow also the Syrian government. But Venezuela wasn't basically an oil-dependent, oil-producing, but oil income dependent. So when oil prices dropped, Venezuela also suffered. And if you put that together, you know, aggression, sabotage, sanction, blockade, and your main source of income is cut off, you have a very critical situation. And they wanted to bring us to a civil war. So they created something that was called the Guarimba. Guarimba is a game in Venezuela. It's like tag. So if you touch a place that is a safe place, that's the Guarimba. If you are outside of the Guarimba, they can tag you. Okay? So they applied that to the military, because it was a military operation, trying to get Venezuela to a civil war. And in CNN, there was a guy, his last name was Burke, and he was nothing to do with Tom Burke. And this guy would tell these terrorists, because they were terrorizing the Venezuelan people, to use an application called Box, to use their smartphones as walkie-talkies. And of course we got into their groups and we could hear what they were saying. And to our surprise, the leaders, the people giving the instructions, had a Colombian accent, which led us to think that it was paramilitary forces leading the military operations in the Guarimbas. Fortunately, we have a very smart president, and they call him Maduro because they are trying to make fun of the fact that he was a bus driver and a union leader, so he is, for their standards, not smart enough. And burro is the name in Spanish for donkey, so they were calling him like that. But that president that they were calling donkey smarted them out. And he didn't fall in the trap, and we defeated the Guarimbas in a peaceful way. And not only that, we defeated all of their operations, 2 attempts to kill our president, 2 attempts to invade Venezuela militarily, and 1 attempt to invade Venezuela through the Colombian border through what was called humanitarian aid, something that they did in Libya. They introduced cavalry troops through the border using the pretext of humanitarian aid. And then it became a humanitarian operation in Libya. And now we know the consequences of that humanitarian operation. They wanted to do the same in Venezuela. And again, President Maduro defeated once more the operation. In that process, still under sanctions, still under blockade, still with our foreign assets stolen, with no resources because of the low prices for oil, Venezuela was able to keep providing, the Venezuelan government was able to keep providing the Venezuelan people with the food that we needed, at least some of the medicine we needed, and to recover the services that were being sabotaged. And not only that, we were heavily dependent on imports for our food. And today, we have become self-sufficient. We kept a program where people, high school graduated, and even people who didn't have the opportunity to study at the university level are now not only studying at the university, but obtaining masters and doctorates for free in our country. I already mentioned about the housing project, but let's say that for some reason, some families got some problems with the roof of their house or some other problems with some walls or something. And so they probably don't have the money to fix it, because those houses go to the poorest people of the country. And the government also has a program called Tricolor Venezuela, tricolor, the colors of the flag, and they provide free assistance for people, the materials and the labor, to fix their houses for free. Free materials and free labor. So the priority of the people is, the priority of the government is the people. So let's go back a little bit to the street councils, okay? We were talking about them. These councils are encompassed by another organization which is called the Community Council. The Community Council encompasses from 5 to 7 street councils, and they organize like the distribution of food, the distribution of medicines. For example, during COVID, we have a system, a computer system, so if you suddenly woke up one day and you were feeling kind of sick with fever or whatever symptoms you may have, you would get online, fill up a form, and the next day a doctor would go and visit your house and took care of you directly. And all your treatment and all the medicines during the period that you were sick were provided completely free. And we took measures, or President Maduro took measures as soon as he could, even before we had our first case of our first COVID case. We were told to use masks. And some people, even people who supposedly are from socialist parties in Europe and in other countries, they were making fun of us. You know? And they were saying, oh, those masks don't do anything, you're wasting efforts, and you don't know anything about COVID. But we decided to do it. And the other thing that we did, besides implementing this system that I mentioned before for home care, we implemented a system where the same community councils and the street councils would provide people with assistance in the sense that if they had to get groceries, we don't have too much of home delivery in Venezuela. It's not, we have some, but it's not well established at this point. So what we did was we provided, or the communities provided a system for those who were sick or those who were not able to get their own groceries. And so we allow them to to receive their food and different kinds of staples directly in their houses. Another thing we did was we provided assistance to kids who were homeschooling now. And probably the parents didn't have the skills to help their kids during that process. So the community councils and the street councils, again, working directly with the people. And we have a variety. We can, probably if you have some questions later about this, I can give more details and be more specific about this. But I would like then to jump now to something very important. And because there is something called communes, which is the base of people's new state. Listen to this. I'm not talking about people's government or simply people's organization. I'm talking about people's state. It's the new communal state that is going to replace the capital state. And this communal state is formed by, I have to rephrase that. This communal state is formed by communal cities, by a federation of communal cities. Each communal city is formed by 5 to 7 communes, and each commune is formed by 7 to 11 community councils. So you see how we are going? And I have not said anything yet about the PSUV or any political party. People in these organizations at the base level, of course, being the PSUV the biggest party in the country, most of the people belong to the PSUV. But no one is asking people, what party do you belong to, before allowing them to participate, to voice their concerns, to express their ideas, to propose projects. Anyone can participate and can also be elected, to the point that, for example, in my community, most of the community council today, as a result of the last election, are from the opposition. And we respect that, because that's a decision made by the community. And you say, well, but isn't that causing problems? Yes, maybe. But I think it's more problematic to leave the previous people who call themselves revolutionary and who were members of the PSUV, but had been involved in corruption. So at that point, the same dynamic of the community is pretty much cleaning space and getting rid of corruption and of people who are trying to benefit from a position of leadership or something like that. And once I had the opportunity to work with President Chavez, and once I asked about that, I said, but if we do things like that, then there is opportunity for the opposition to control the leadership of popular organizations. And he said, if that happens, then it's your fault, because you didn't do your job. See? So what we are doing is trying to create a new way of understanding development, a new way of understanding popular power, and a new way of understanding how to build socialism. And it's a lot of try and error sometimes. It's a lot of hard work most of the time. It's pretty much something that you have to carry out with a lot of love and passion for people and for your children and the future, but it's a beautiful endeavor. And it's something that I really personally think that it has been so gratifying for me, in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of everything. Because if you think about it, because a lot of people say, you know what, I prefer just to work by myself. Just tell me what to do and I'll help you. But, you know, to be in meetings, to be in groups, and to work, Meredith, she's impossible to work with. And so I tell these people, okay, look at this. Let's imagine that we are the first humans in the world. That, by the way, my personal opinion is that humans started to spring up all over the world. There are people from paleontologists and people who study this thing, they say, oh, the humans started in Africa, and they were born from the monkeys or whatever, and in that sense, what they are trying to tell us is that people started in Africa, but then people evolved, and people became white and smart, but Africans stayed in the same stage pretty much that they started to be hundreds or thousands of years ago. And that's the implicit message that they are giving us. See? And sometimes we use the same language and the same ideas that they present to us. And I was telling Tracy today, for example, that we talk about global warming or climate change. That's the language of the powerful. Because climate change, I mean, the climate is changing all the time. So you don't see it as something really particularly to worry about. And global warming say, well, then good, because we have very harsh winters, so that may be a good thing. But if you talk about the destruction of the world, the destruction of Earth, and the destruction of the environment and of us as species, then it's a different thing. See? But we don't talk about this issue, which is exactly what's happening. They are destroying the world, they are destroying nature and everything in a pursuit of profit and in a pursuit of domination and their own benefit over the whole humanity and the whole planet in general. Then people, because we don't call things with the real names, people think that, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about that, you know? So in that process of trying to really understand what's going on, what we have to do, what's ahead, what we are really building, we're going to have advances and setbacks. And we don't have to worry about that. That's the way it is. That's the way it works. And I would be worried if we would be like advancing all the time without obstacles, because then I would be suspecting that we are doing things wrong. But when we are working in the right direction, the enemy is going to try to stop us, and we are going to have to regroup. We are going to try to take some time to think things through, and we have to take some time to prepare for the next advance and the next, I was going to say that word, but by the next hit or the next crush that we are going to inflict on the enemy. And in that process of understanding our role, I want to propose that we stop calling ourselves leftists and liberals sometimes, certain people, others social democrats, others right-wing. Those are words that, the same as climate change and global warming, really have no meaning. There is a huge range of options for someone to be right-wing. And if we want revolution, then we are revolutionaries. And that's my proposal. Let's call ourselves revolutionaries, and let's create revolution. Let's change the structures of society. Let's create a real different world for all of us, for our children, for our future. And let's create it together. Let's work together. The Venezuelan people, the US people, we are probably two countries formally, but we are one struggle. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking. So I just wanted to ask for donations here in the middle before we take Q&A, which is going to be a great section. But Dozthor has come a long way. You know, tonight we're breaking a media blockade. This is stuff that you'll never see on TV in the United States, this perspective. So it's really valuable to have you here. And it's not cheap to get here. So, let's see. Is anybody able to give $50 tonight? Yes. Yes, I got the bucket here. Good. Yeah, you can go around with the bucket. Thank you so much. We can give a round. We can give some love for that. Very good. There's food, house, you know, a place to stay. Gas isn't cheap. Airfare. So let's see, can anybody give 20? Oh, that's so helpful. Thank you so much. I see 4 or 5 hands, so that's very helpful. And over there too. Yeah, Wyatt, you're leaving Wyatt hanging, but it's okay. Oh, and yes, yeah. And Lucia, yeah. Thank you all so much. That's very generous. So we'll pass the bucket around. We'll still have the bucket. Oh, and people watching online. You can't get away. Yeah.
I need. I'm sorry, but I forgot to finish an idea. I was talking about us being the first humans in Earth. And think about this. We need to get together and create a language for us to be able to communicate. Because we can communicate with signals, but it's very limited. And we have to get to an agreement on a language, on how to name things. See? We have to put names on things. We have to greet each other. We have to express love to each other. We have to express this some kind of disagreement with each other, etc. Think about having to grab a fruit from a tree without having it that can kill you. Think about having to try to hunt an animal, and it's very difficult for you with very rudimentary tools to try to hunt an animal by yourself. So all these tasks somehow involved to work together. And in order for us to be here today, we had to develop the ability to work together before. But what happens? Today, we are taught to save ourselves individually and to try to be successful, quote unquote, individually. And if we don't do it, then we are a failure. See? And why is that? Because the system knows that if we don't unite and if we don't fight together, then it's easier for them to keep power. So the call today is to be revolutionary and to work together, to love each other, and to fight together, to push the enemy, to push imperialism into the hole of hell once for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Dozthor. So, we're going to start our Q&A section here real quick, but the buckets are still available around. It's not cheap to bring a guest over to the United States, give them food, a place to stay, gas to travel. So if you weren't feeling quite generous before and you feel a sudden urge, don't let that opportunity pass you by. We still have the buckets. So I'm going to go ahead and start our Q&A section because, Dozthor gave us a lot of information about how the revolutionary process in Venezuela is truly trying to build a society that benefits, not just the Venezuelan people, but also provide a sort of model for how a communal, collective society can actually function. And I already see a hand. This is incredible. I'll go ahead and take Meredith's question.
You have a banner up about Alex Saab. Can you tell us about Alex Saab, who he is, and what we can do to free him?
Sure. I was talking about all the sanctions and the difficult situations that we as Venezuelans were confronting, and especially the children and the elderly. And people like Alex Saab were really, some people say, oh, he's a businessman. He's a guy with a lot of money, but he is also a guy with a big heart and with high level of consciousness. And he was concerned about the welfare of the Venezuelan people. As such, he was tasked with the purchasing of food in the international market. Venezuela couldn't get. Venezuela even had 35. It was $3.5 billion in a bank in Portugal, which is a bank that countries all over the world use as a channel, as an intermediary, to get cheaper medicine and food from other countries of the world. And they stole the money. And Venezuela tried to get in a direct relationship with the president of Mexico, with Manuel López Obrador, and we started purchasing food from them. And the United States blockaded the operation, threatened the president of Mexico with imposing sanctions on them, and pretty much they were trying to make impossible for us to get food in the international market. And I was mentioning before, we were heavily dependent on imports for our food. So Alex Saab became, in a really secret way, because if the US, as they did, learned about he trying to get food and medicines for Venezuela and gasoline for Venezuela, they were going to go after him. And that's what happened eventually. He started facilitating the process of Venezuela getting food. We started to get subsidized food more often thanks to his efforts. But on his way to purchase or to do some transactions as a Venezuelan diplomat, because Venezuela gave him the status of diplomat, even though he's a Colombian-born person. He was kidnapped in Cabo Verde under U.S. direct orders. He was kept in captivity for over a year, and then he was transferred to the United States, and he is still kidnapped in a U.S. jail in Miami. No real charges have been presented against him, and as a diplomat he has immunity, and still the U.S. didn't respect that, and they are still holding him illegally in a U.S. jail. So today we are asking for his liberation and demanding President Biden to immediately release Alex Saab from his illegal detention and to stop the blockade and the sanctions against the Venezuelans.
If you're gonna raise your hands, raise them nice and tall so I can see. I see only, let's see, 1, 2,
This,
3, 4, 5. All right, 6. Okay, so let's start with you, and I've got the rest of you right here, ready to go.
Well, thank you so much for speaking. My question to you was, what does class conflict look like in a society in which there is people's power, or the state is on the side of the people? And how is it different from here, where the state is in league with the bourgeoisie to crush the people? How does class conflict play out in a progressive, more socialist society?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. What we have, and not only in Venezuela, but also in most countries of the world, is a multi-dimensional class struggle. What do I mean for this? I'm going to go to the simplest way first before answering this question in regards to Venezuela. We have a company in the United States, a corporation. They produce, just to give you an example, they produce computers. Part of the computers are made in Mexico. Other parts are made in China. Other parts of the computer are made in Vietnam. Other parts are made in Colombia. However, the owners of the corporation live here in the United States, and there is a part of the process that takes place inside the United States. Pretty much usually the final assembly of the parts. So what we have is the exploitation of people who is not necessarily part of the structure of the society where the owners of the means of production are located physically. So the contradiction between labor and capital acquires international character, because now you have workers in other societies being exploited by people in other countries. See? So we need to think about class struggle then in a more multi-dimensional aspects or in a multi-dimensional character. Okay? In Venezuelan case, we have not only that, because we have people producing parts for companies in Europe, for example. We don't have right now, well, I think that even even companies from Europe, I think that they are not operating anymore in the country. But we used to have, until recently, people producing parts for European companies and Japanese companies. And we may no longer have that, but it was still part of our reality. But what do we have is a mixed system where the workers of a factory are protected by law in the sense that they have working stability or job stability. What this means is that Venezuelan workers cannot get fired just because their boss or the owner of a company just decided that because the profits are somehow lower, that he needs to get rid of a certain number of people. They cannot do that in Venezuela because workers are protected by law. And their job is an important part of the living conditions and of their welfare. So the Venezuelan government protects the workers. Another thing that happens is that companies and corporations in general, being them foreign or local corporations, they have to provide additional benefits to workers. Okay? So it's not just a fact that workers have to try to organize to survive in a confrontation with a powerful class or a powerful sector of the society. The workers fight together with the government together with popular organizations in the community, because the communes have also, they also oversee production in their area of influence, being it private or communal, because communes can produce their own goods too, or public, meaning some national government-owned corporation in their territory. So what we have then is the power of a new state working together with workers, and this new state meaning the main national government, the parties, the communes, and other social organizations to protect workers and families from the power of corporations. And that takes the game to a new different level, because then is the contradictions between labor and capital are solved or are now presented with a different muscle on the part of the workers. Workers are no longer subjected to the whim of the private corporate owners, private corporations owners. So, in that sense, we have a government, and which, by the way, as I mentioned before, is led by a union leader, a boss union leader. The Minister of Labor is the union leader of the subway system. And if a company needs to file, and by a complaint, I mean that you, for example, are permanently arriving late to work, or leaving earlier, or you don't want to work. You go to work, to the working place, and you don't work. So they file a complaint, and you have to sign it. And if you are not in agreement with what the owner says, then you can litigate not before, you can litigate not before a court. You can litigate before a representation of the Ministry of Labor, which is in favor of workers in the first place. See? So it's a totally different environment. On the other part, we have a situation also where some people owning corporations in Venezuela, both Venezuelan and foreigners, left the company. And the workers, they just packed their things and left as part of a U.S. finance program to make, again, conditions more difficult for the Venezuelan people. Because if a factory closes, then there is no more production, workers lose their jobs, and everything gets more complicated. So what we did was, or what workers did, what the workers said, okay, I mean, we know how to produce. We know how to manage the factory. And they asked the government, could you help us to put the factory back in business? And the government said, of course. And the government provided them not only with finances, with financial resources, but with a market for the products, which is the most difficult part of it. Because usually it is the bourgeoisie, the one controlling the market, you know, and the one keeping the client secret. But now, the government is not only providing them with the means of production, but it's also providing them with the market they need to make their production viable. See? That's another thing. And the other thing that we have is communal production. By that, I mean that the communes, which I mentioned before, are community-based organizations, and they receive financing from the government, and they can develop their own ways of generating income. One of the reasons why we were able to become self-sufficient in food was because of the existence of the commune. Why? Because they were able to rapidly start to produce crops. And the government would provide them with the seeds and the fertilizers and the things that they needed to produce whatever they wanted to produce. But also with livestock. And also with other things, like for example, in the commune where I live, there is a textile factory producing uniforms and clothing for people, you know, and other things, but mostly that. There is a cement factory. So there are different ways that communes become productive in themselves. And that has also allowed for the communes to become in certain places self-sufficient. And it allows for popular power, because when you are self-sufficient or when you are able to produce, you are not dependent on others. Okay? So that's another level of production, and what we have there is that the contradiction between capital and labor is not there anymore, because those producing are distributing capital and earnings on the people and for the benefit of the people, and not producing for the community. See? So we have different aspects of it. You're welcome.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. And
Let me be the guy.
what's that?
I got a question. I can shut up, I hope. I think the biggest fear of the ruling class here is South America leaning and getting more involved with China. And now with Lula, they will. Lula will work with anybody. Can't keep people, I got a big family, they just never stop calling. So anyway, my question to you is, how do you see that? And what countries are you trading with and working with?
That question actually was presented by a journalist to President Chavez. And his answer was, if the United States can work closely with China, why can't we? You know? So that would be my first answer. And regarding what countries we are having a close relationship and commercial, and I would say that we have not only commercial, but political, military, and many very close relations with certain countries in pretty much every aspect of life and politics and military and things that have to do with the country. And primarily, we have a close relationship with China, Russia, Iran, India, Turkey. Turkey changed its name to Turkey. And we have also, of course, a close, very close relationship with Cuba, Nicaragua, countries from CARICOM, Bolivia, and well, now we're going to have a close relationship with Colombia and Brazil. So we really believe in a peace diplomacy. That's a central point of our diplomacy. We call it peace diplomacy, and is like a central aspect of our relationships with other countries. But we also believe in a world where we can have dignified, equalitarian, and solidarian relationships with all of the countries of the world. And in that sense, we believe in a pluripolar, multi-centered world. And we have the right as a sovereign country to establish close relationships with any country of the world that we want. And we have the right to not be subjected to any kind of sanctions or blockades or anything, or to a relation of dependency with any powerful country of the world, and to resist and to advance and to defeat any attempt to subject us to any condition of that type.
Did you in the back have your hand up earlier?
Me?
Yeah, do you have a quick one for us?
Sure, I think. So, you visited George Floyd Square, which is like probably the closest I've seen to like an actual community type of like functioning group where people are there to support each other. And I was hoping to hear if, well, I'm really impressed with the community level and the street level organization. I think that's just amazing. But I was wondering if there are spaces like that had been there before revolution, or like that exist now that remind you of like George Floyd Square only in Venezuela.
Yeah, actually, we have had the opportunity to carry on with a long-lasting struggle in our countries. Our revolution is not the result of an overnight struggle. We actually, in 1989, had a popular uprising, and unfortunately, people didn't have a leadership. They didn't have a party, a revolutionary party, leading the struggle. And what happened was that in 3 days, they killed a minimum of 3,000 people in Caracas only. So that led to the defeat of the neoliberal program at the time in Venezuela. Venezuela was the first country to oppose neoliberal policies. And Chavez was not there was not there at the time. I mean, it was 1989. However, it inspired Chavez to try in 1992 to organize an armed insurrection against the government, the same government that had killed the 3,000 people in Caracas several years earlier. So, further on, there were other attempts before and after of people trying to establish a more just, real democratic and an equalitarian social, political, and economic system in Venezuela. And that led to Chavez's victory in the elections of 1998 and the creation of a new constitution, a new framework under which the public spheres of government were put under the control of people. And a lot of different changes that were discussed at the national level in all corners of the country, we held discussions, and we listened to proposals of people about what they wanted for the country in the future. And we changed the Constitution based on those proposals. And we voted the Constitution and approved the Constitution with 80% of approval of the people. So what we have now then is the result of many years of trouble. In some parts of the country, there are organizations that have more development in the work they have, because they come from many years before, and their work has consolidated, and with the support of the revolutionary government, then it's easier for them to get stronger. And we have organizations who started to organize after Chavez won the election. So they are a little bit behind in terms of maturity, etc. You know? So we have that.
Right. Take your hand.
First, señor Zurlent, muchas gracias para hablar y nosotros estoy muy agradecido. My question to you, though, I was reading part of the biography of Hugo Chavez, and about his childhood, he started off as a choir boy, and he had a very deep respect for Jesus Christ as a revolutionary, somebody who made a movement of carpenters, fishermen, anti-imperialist fighters, and who fed the multitudes and healed the sick and the poor for free. And he talks about his deep respect for at least some of the ideals of the Catholic Church. And I actually wanted to know, currently in Venezuela, is the Catholic Church supporting you? Or is there like a split? Like, is the hierarchy opposing you while the priests are more supportive of the movement?
Yeah, thanks for your question. We need to differentiate between Jesus as a revolutionary person and the Catholic Church. I think they have nothing to do one with the other. It's my personal opinion. So what we have then is Chavez understanding the revolutionary work of Jesus Christ during his time, but also understanding that the church, or any church, was the result of a structure of power for man that somehow were created as a way of dominating people, or of getting people to believe in certain things, but who were not necessarily related with revolutionary change, which was, as Chavez many times said, the first revolutionary, the first communist of the world. And so what we have in Venezuela today is a Catholic Church that mostly at all levels is against the revolution, but we also have an attempt to create in Venezuela something similar to what the US imperialists created in El Salvador and in Brazil, an invasion of evangelical Christian churches trying to promote the support for Israel and anti-socialist and anti-communist ideas. And in that process, the competition of these evangelical churches, which is the Catholic Church, has become more radical because they want to be more anti-communist than the newcomers, you know. And so we are in that process. But we also have some sectors, religious sectors, who are, really revolutionaries, and so, I mean, we are in that struggle of trying to incorporate people to really think by themselves and not to be influenced by some absurd ideas that only contribute to create dissent, hate, and things that not contribute to the solidarity and unity of the Venezuelan people. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone, we have one more activity planned for this evening, but first I want to remind everyone that my organization, the Anti-War Committee, has a little table in the back of the room. If you would like more information on our organization, if you would like to learn about our campaign to get the State Board of Investment to stop investing in Israeli weapons companies, if you want to sign up and learn more information, if you found money in your pocket, come pay us a visit in the back of the room. Additionally, we have friends from Freedom Road Socialist Organization in the other side of the room with their own wonderful table. I encourage you to just pay us all a visit, see what we've got going on. Now, we would like those in the audience who are willing to participate to come up and stand with us in front of this Alex Saab banner. We're going to do a little solidarity video. Come on. Audience participation is, I'm not going to say it's mandatory, but I will be very upset if you don't do it.
That's not true. But Dozthor is collecting these statements from around the country, and so this is your video. Our video will be one of many videos around the country. All right, so whenever you're ready, Brad. I've been given scripted words and told by Tom I have some.
Let's get the banners, the free Alex Saab banners over there. The ones over there.
Oh, do people want to grab this banner? Okay. All right. So tell me, Brad. Wait, we don't have all of our accoutrements. So we're going to start off with some chanting. Are people ready to do some chanting? Woo!
Okay.
Okay. Sure. All right. So are we on, Brad?
We have to repeat 3 times. Free Alex Saab. Yeah, you done.
I
sorry.
You gave me the script. You told me. I'm ready. Okay. Also, Tom told me I had some freedom. To Minneapolize it. All right, tell me when we're ready, Brad.
Go.
Give me a second.
Brad's like, I can't handle the pressure. I have to be perfect.
It's not letting me do it sideways, which is really weird. It usually does.
I think you're handling it.
Good work, Brad.
Vertical is more common nowadays with the TikTok.
Yeah, get it.
This is so fun.
Maybe learn it sideways.
Okay, now that works.
Need a younger person doing it.
Brad's,
Nope,
oh,
gotta go
Brad
back.
old? That's just rude.
I know.
Probably the truth.
He's really good.
It's true for you.
It's true.
Ready?
Good.
Okay. When Venezuela's under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When Venezuela's under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Free Alex Saab!
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 We are gathered today to send a message of solidarity to the people of Venezuela. We also have a message of solidarity to the PSUV and to President Maduro.